Hello, how's it going? It is Brett from the Sunday League Pundits of the 90th Minute, and today we are going to be talking about the Canadian national team, as tomorrow on Friday, September 23rd, they face off against their first bit of non-CONCACAF competition and get ready for their first World Cup in 36 years. Now, the announcement of the club, of the national team, has come out, and well, there's some things to talk about. So, heading into the tune-up games for the World Cup, let's talk about the Canadian national team. There are some big storylines heading into these tune-up games for the Canadian national team, and we're going to start off in the midfield. Now, the midfield for Canada has recalled only 4 midfielders for the tune-up games. Yes, 4 midfielders for 2 games in total. Those 4 midfielders are Ishmael Kone from CF Montreal, Stefan Eustáquio from FC Porto, Mark Anthony Kaye from Toronto FC, and as well Samuel Piette from CF Montreal. Obviously, those are 3 MLS midfielders and 1 from Europe, obviously being Stefan Eustáquio. Now, the nice thing for Team Canada is that Stefan Eustáquio, while he is playing in Europe, getting a lot of playing time over in FC Porto, and as well, even getting a lot of playing time in the Champions League for Porto. All that experience is very important for Canada and Stefan Eustáquio in general. That will help the midfield, who is already depleted. Now, unfortunately for Canada, Stefan Eustáquio is really the only player who has had the most constant time this season. Piette is now just really getting back into his form with CF Montreal, but he hasn't really played a lot of games recently for the Canadian national team. How will his transition back into international football come? And will it be that smooth? We will have to see with these tune-up matches. Next up, Mark Anthony Kaye, who has been a stalwart in the Canadian midfield for the last couple of years, especially over the octagonal process, but he's coming back from injury, kind of a bad injury as well. Only kept him sidelined for about a month or 2 or month and a half, but a lower body injury nonetheless. And now as well, Toronto FC has been eliminated from the playoffs in the MLS. Him trying to get back into shape for the World Cup is really looking like a rocky road. And finally, Ishmael Kone in this midfield, who has had the best success in the MLS so far this year. Obviously, he's playing next to Piette as well at CF Montreal. But Ishmael Kone almost went to Sheffield United during the transfer window. Kone ended up staying in the MLS at CF Montreal because of some actual issues from Sheffield United trying to transfer out another player to get Kone in. Now, for Ishmael Kone, this will only be his 3rd cap for Canada. Not a lot of experience for the Canadian midfield here. That's kind of an issue. Now, the Canadian midfield is also suffering from some major injuries. Atiba Hutchinson, the longest standing Canadian national, is now concerned that he might miss the World Cup because of a bone bruise. Atiba's conditioning will be an issue. It sounds like his bone bruise will take him out until the end of October, which would mean he only has about a game, maybe 2, to get into shape before the World Cup. That is not a lot of time, especially considering he's missed a lot of football. Now to Jonathan Osorio, who was actually named in the original roster for these games against Qatar and Uruguay. However, he has not made the trip to the national team, and now he is staying in Toronto to deal with what is being called a neurological dysfunction. He caught, I believe, either an elbow or a knee into the back of the head during his MLS season, and it sounds like he's been dealing with kind of similar to vertigo type issues, just a lot of directional issues, and that is really tough for the Canadian national team. 2 of their most important midfielders are gone from the tune-up games, the last tune-up games, the final tune-up games heading into the World Cup. So why is that such a big deal? Well, Canada will be playing against non-CONCACAF competition for the first time in years, and these are massive tune-up games for the Canadian national team heading into the World Cup. First up, on Friday, September 23rd, the Canadian national team will be going up against Qatar, who is the tournament, the World Cup hosts. So that will be their first time playing against anyone out of the CONCACAF. I expect to win at least a draw out of that match in Qatar. It better be a win, let's be real. That match again on Friday, it'll be at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. on the Eastern Seaboard, and at 10 a.m. on the Western Seaboard, the Pacific Time Zone. And then on Tuesday, September 27th, the biggest test for the Canadian national team in a very long time, if not ever. They are going to go up against Uruguay, who has a long list of European top-end talents. First up, obviously, is the 100 million euro man, Darwin Núñez. Well, let's be real, B-Tech Andy Carroll. Also getting the call to the Uruguay national team, obviously one of the greatest players of all time, Luis Suarez will also be on that Uruguayan team. Fede Valverde from Real Madrid is also on Uruguay. Also there for Uruguay, Ronald Araujo, Rodrigo Bentancur as well on that Uruguayan side, and as well, finally, Lucas Torreira. A fantastic squad over in Uruguay, and that's only mentioning some of the top-end talent that are playing over in Europe. They still have so much fantastic talent that is playing in South America, in the MLS, all around the world, that is really going to cause issues for the Canadian national team. Now that match starts at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. That is noon over on the East Coast, and 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Now, the Canadian national team might be without some of their most experienced players in Atiba Hutchinson and Jonathan Osorio, but there is a lot of youth coming up for the Canadian national team. First, we're going to talk about Ishmael Kone, as we have talked a little bit about his season already, but for CF Montreal, Ishmael Kone has really become a star in Montreal. 24 appearances in the MLS with 2 goals, 4 assists. The guy has been given 5 yellow cards. He is all over the place for CF Montreal. If you see a heat map of his, it is all over the place. Ishmael Kone can really facilitate and move the ball. I'm excited to see what he can do in extended minutes for the Canadian national team, but we'll be very interested to see what he can do against top-end competition like a Uruguay. Next up, a guy I've been hoping to get a call for a very, very long time, and that is Theo Carbonneau. Theo Carbonneau has been tearing it up in the lower English divisions for the last couple of seasons. He is currently owned by Wolves, but he's been sent off on loan for the last couple of seasons. This season, he is playing in the championship with Blackpool and has really played well for the limited amount of minutes that he can get. In 10 appearances right now for Blackpool, Theo Carbonneau has 3 goals, all coming in the championship. Now, he does also have 6 appearances for the Canadian national team with 2 goals on the docket. Now, he hasn't been recalled for especially the last year, heading into the Octagon and the more important games for qualification, but he is here now, and hopefully with his form in the future, could make the national team for the World Cup a name to watch for these 2 matches. And finally, one of my favorite players on the national team who I think deserves more spotlight than he gets, that is Ike Ugbo, who's currently playing in Ligue 1 at Troyes. He has been playing a fantastic season when he can get on the pitch. He only has 7 appearances so far for Troyes with a goal, however. He has been able to contribute in the games that he has come into. He really, really, really needs that time with the Canadian national team and really needs to get some playing time with the national team as well. He only has 4 caps for the national team so far, with no goals or no goal contributions to speak of so far. So hopefully these 2 games will be something that he can show his skills in to really force the hand of John Herdman and play this kid more. He needs to play. Ike Ugbo is fantastic. I love the way he plays, just with a lot of energy. He's always around the top, pressing the top line. He's very, very impressive. And finally, along with the youth, we do have a couple of national team debuts to talk about for the Canadian national team. First, we're going to talk about a defender who got his call up for the first time. He played in the CPL last year at Cavalry. He is now applying his trade at CF Montreal in the MLS, and that is Joel Waterman. In 28 appearances this year for CF Montreal, Joel Waterman has 3 goals and 2 assists as a defender. At the same time, the lad has 12 yellow cards. He is difficult to play against. As mentioned, this is his first call-up for the national team. Played in the CPL last year, really attributes the success and the skill and the talent in the CPL right now. I hope Joel Waterman can get some time for the national team on the back line and see what he can do. The other debut for the Canadian national team comes from Spain, as Luca Colosio will be making his debut for the Canadian national team. An 18-year-old from Connecticut. Yes, from Connecticut. He also played his youth football in Manhattan, but has a family member, I guess, who is Canadian, and declared his Canadian candidacy, I guess, or his Canadian citizenship, and will play for the Canadian national team at 18 years old. He has 1 appearance for RCD Espanyol B, who is playing in the 4th tier of Spanish football. It's a pretty good program for Colosio to be playing in, and I'm very excited to see what he can do. Finally, I just wanted to mention one other player who I think should deserve a call very, very soon, and that is Lucas McNaughton. This guy is a stud. Played at Pacific last year in the CPL, currently playing at Toronto FC, and has been an absolute star for Toronto FC in that back line, and has been a stalwart and really a constant for the back end for the TFC there, the Reds over in Toronto, as he's been playing next to Crescito, Chris Mavinga, Michael Bradley. He's been playing against or with a lot of very high-end talent in the MLS and has kept those players out. In fact, he almost basically beat out Carlos Salcedo for that spot for TFC, and Carlos Salcedo is back in Mexico playing in Liga MX. Mostly, yes, he did have some off-pitch stuff, but Lucas McNaughton has really stepped up in that position that TFC really expected Carlos Salcedo to be stepping up and contributing in. He has had a very good season. Yes, TFC is missing the playoffs, but still a fantastic first season for Lucas McNaughton in the MLS. I hope he gets a call soon. Well, that does it for me, as once again the Canadian national team goes up against Qatar tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. over on the East Coast, and 10 a.m. on the Pacific Coast. We shall see you soon. Stay safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And let's go Canada, baby.